Hi, it's me, Louise. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to do something different, and this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time now. Back when I had my first Q&A for this channel, I think it was a year ago, one of the questions was, what are your favorite artists? And my response to that at the time was, hang on, I'm working on a video about that, which I was, but then I never got around to finishing it, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm finishing the video. This will be all about my inspirations, my role models, my favorite artists, and also quite a few YouTubers, art YouTubers that have inspired me. I want to give some credit where credit is due, and also just have fun and talk about art with you guys. So let's just get into it. Let's look at art and get inspired and intimidated at the same time, because that's what happens to me. And let's start with watercolor, because watercolor is my medium of choice, my number one, the medium that I've practiced the most with. But I probably wouldn't have chosen that medium if it hadn't been for Karl Mårtens. He's a Swedish watercolor painter who mostly paints birds, and I've seen his art here and there throughout my life. He's quite popular, at least here in Sweden, and a lot of people have his art prints in their homes. I always found his loose and expressive style really intriguing. And then a few years ago, I decided to research him some more for some reason. I don't remember. And I found this video of him on YouTube where he, like a documentary style video, where he talks about his art and he demonstrates his process. And that just blew me away. I had no idea that this is how he works. I had only ever seen these watercolor birds, like smaller framed art prints. And now it turns out that his original paintings are often huge, and he paints them like on the floor, and he's standing over them with these huge Chinese calligraphy brushes, and he paints these birds from memory. No reference photos, no pencil sketches. He just starts by meditating and seeing the bird in his mind's eye. And then he just dips his brush in some paint and he like attacks the paper, often with such force that the paint just splatters across it. And then he paints very intuitively and very like wildly but softly at the same time. And it almost looks like dancing in a way, the way he does it. And these paintings, like the poses of these birds, their intense gaze, he really captures their personality. He captures birds in the same way that I see birds. And he has this unique balance between careful details and big sweeping brushstrokes. Some parts of his paintings look a little bit half-finished, and I love that look. To me, what Karl Mårtens does is just pure wizardry, and ever since I saw that video, it's been my dream to be able to paint that way, to be like a watercolor wizard. So he's definitely my first and foremost inspiration, and I've shown you his work in a lot of my previous videos. I have his art book here on my shelf. He's like the original reason that I ever felt inspired to practice art, and watercolor in particular, because before that I hadn't really had any great experiences with watercolor at all. Watching his work and seeing his paintings kind of made me realize what you could really do with watercolor, and how beautiful and bold it could be, because my associations to watercolors before that had just been these kind of washed out flower bouquets, the kind of art that you see in like dentist waiting rooms. That's not what watercolor has to be. There are many other ways to paint watercolor. So moving on my list of watercolor inspirations, we have a Swedish artist called Bjorklund. He's just... I can't even describe how envious I am at his style. He has a very, very unique style. He uses both watercolor but also oils. He's an oil painter as well. But he really has a style and a choice of subjects, and the way he paints his subjects is really unique and interesting and striking. His technique is just out of this world. Both his oil paintings and his watercolor paintings, the depth of the color, the depth of the shadows, the color scheme he uses, the highlights, I can't even describe it. It's just so artsy in the best possible way. I really, really envy him, especially his animal studies. You know, he has these little studies of rats and mice, like dead mice, and they're the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It feels like a living organic thing that you could reach out and touch. It's that lifelike. Obviously, I'll put links to all of these people that I'm mentioning in the description because you just need to go and check them out. Nick Runge. Also an extremely talented watercolor artist. He also has a very unique style. You can identify his types of paintings right away. They're kind of built up in a slightly blocky way, like they're geometrical almost. A lot of visible brushstrokes. The depth of his darks is just, I mean, these are not washed out flower bouquet type watercolors. These are really bold and striking and vibrant paintings. Some of his paintings are just look almost photorealistic because they're so detailed and so masterfully rendered that you can hardly believe that it's watercolor. His technique is just it just blows me away, and I will probably never achieve this level of mastery in my work. He's one of those artists that you get kind of intimidated by. He's one of the first people that I found that made me realize what you can do with this medium. I feel like a lot of his paintings look kind of like oil paintings. They have a style that a lot of oil paintings have, but they're watercolor, and you can do that stuff with watercolor if you like that particular art style. So yeah, Nick Runge. And then we have Tom Shepard, which is one of my fellow YouTubers, watercolor YouTubers, and he also paints birds. And that's how I found him, because he has these really great tutorials, these bird painting tutorials that have taught me a lot. His watercolors are very vibrant. I mean, they are almost glowing. There is so much color depth and vibrancy in his paintings, and he has a very loose style. So he's one of the people that kind of taught me how to loosen up more in my paintings, and that's something that I still really need to work on, because I tend to stiffen up, and I would like to be able to paint more the way he does. Maybe not all the way, but I would like a little bit of that element in my watercolor paintings. And I also really love how he does his backgrounds. It's not really, this flat wash, but it's more like very abstract looking backgrounds that beautifully complement his subjects. He really knows how to combine his colors, like warm and cold colors, and how to get those really deep, rich darks. So take a look at his stuff. If you are like me, if you're interested in painting birds or animals, you definitely should take a look at his watercolor birds series, which I am of course linking below. Another fellow YouTuber watercolor artist that have inspired me both as an artist and as a YouTuber is Chris Hong. I mean, she is just so talented. I love watching her videos. They're very soft-spoken. She's really good at teaching. She's a Skillshare teacher as well, and I've taken a lot of her Skillshare classes. I am waiting for her Skillshare class on how to paint watercolor portraits. She has hinted for a while that she's working on it, and I don't think I've ever been as excited about a Skillshare class as I am about that, and I really hope that it will come out soon, because I will be all over that one. She has shown her watercolor portrait process in quite a lot of YouTube videos and also on Instagram. Like her step-by-step Instagram slideshows are really great for, seeing how to approach a portrait, but there's still so much of the stuff she does that just, I don't know how she knows how to do that. I'm really jealous of her technique, the way she combines softness and crispness in her portraits, the way she handles her shadows, the shadow colors that she chooses. And her YouTube channel is just such an inspiration to me. She's one of those YouTubers who I don't think she has shown her face in any of her videos. And she doesn't have to, because her content is so great. She's so talented. She's a very good teacher, and I just love her content so much. Let's move on to charcoal, my second favorite medium. One of my first role models for charcoal is this channel on YouTube called Mad Charcoal. He has a very interesting process to his charcoals. I mean, if you've searched for tutorials on charcoal drawing, you know this as well. Most of the stuff that comes up is this really super photorealistic stuff, you know, photorealistic drawings. They look like black and white photographs. And I don't know why most people who use charcoal seem to want to draw that way, but it's just not a style that interests me at all. And he has the complete opposite style of that. His charcoal portraits are really chaotic and really wild. On some of them, you can barely see that it's a face. Or, you know, it's this really chaotic mess of lines and smudges. But then there are these areas in the drawing that are super crisp and detailed that you can totally see that it's a face. So he has this extreme contrast between kind of realistic and detailed and just very abstract and painterly and crazy. And I think it's so fascinating. He has a lot of YouTube shorts where he just shows his chaotic process, and it's super interesting. You really just feel like imitating him because it looks like so much fun the way he does it. And also he's the one who introduced me to pan pastel. As soon as I saw one of his videos where he used, you know, that little palette knife, I just immediately went online and ordered it for myself and fell madly in love with pan pastel as well. As you might have seen by now, it's one of my favorite mediums to work with, together with charcoal. Another charcoal role model is Jeff Haines. Oh, you know, his portraits are just the perfect level of realistic but loose. That's what I'm aiming for in my portraits. Realistic looking, like lifelike looking, but very soft and impressionistic. And he uses only vine or willow charcoal, which I think is interesting because it's quite difficult to work with. It's a very soft type of charcoal that doesn't really stick too well to the paper. I mean, you can see in his portraits that they're very smudgy and loose. He uses a brush a lot. Like he puts down the basic profile of values like light and shadow, and then he softly brushes it out with like a watercolor brush to create this ghost image almost of the face. And then he goes in again and he sharpens the shadows and adds detail, and he uses a kneaded eraser to pull out these really crisp highlights. They almost look like oil paintings, some of them. I love this style so much. He's probably one of the YouTubers whose videos I have rewatched the most. I have several of them saved in a private playlist, and whenever I want to practice my charcoal portraits, I just kind of watch a few of his speed paints just to like freshen up my mind. And there's also a channel called Zin Lim, great YouTube channel with a lot of tutorials as well. He also has a very interesting, loose but realistic style to his art and to his portraits and figure drawings. Definitely check that out as well if you're interested in charcoal. And then there is Nathan Fowkes, which is probably my biggest charcoal hero right now. He is a super experienced, super professional artist. He's a concept artist for, you know, animated movies. He's worked with DreamWorks and Disney and Paramount. He does a lot of digital stuff, like digital environment studies. But what caught my attention with him is his portraits, his charcoal portraits, because they blow you away, essentially. They just take your breath away. And I'm actually taking one of his courses right now, his charcoal portrait course, which I will link in the description as well. I was so excited when I saw that he is actually teaching his process for these portraits. They're really expressive, really painterly. He uses compressed charcoal and white pastel together in a really striking way. He has a lot of great tutorials on his channel as well that you should check out. And now let's move on to some other types of artists. I'm also inspired by oil painters. One of my absolute favorite oil painters, and I discovered her a long time ago, even way before I ever considered becoming an artist myself, and her name is Lindsey Kustush. Sorry for slaughtering it. Yeah, I'll link her below for you. I discovered her on Instagram because of some of her bird paintings she had made. She had painted like owls and ravens and a pigeon, I think, in some painting. It's the type of art that you can really see hanging in really expensive, exclusive galleries, which I bet it does. I'm pretty sure it does. It looks really fancy and expensive, you know, really artsy. It's kind of wild and expressive, very vibrant in its colors. Oh my god, this barn owl. A lot of her backgrounds are really like dark and gritty and muddy, and then the subject kind of pops out of that. I basically can't describe her work in words. It needs to be experienced. You need to go and look at it because the crispness of their feathers and how they kind of blend into the background in certain places. I'm almost kind of relieved that oil painting is not my medium and that I've kind of abandoned my ambitions on learning oil painting, because this is really intimidating stuff. You know, you cannot compare yourself to her talent because it scares the crap out of you, basically. I will never be this good at anything. Anyways, moving on to another oil painter who just kind of scares the crap out of you. And I don't know how to say his name. He's German. His name is Alpay Efe. He's a really big, popular YouTuber as well. You can find the link to his channel in the description. He is just intimidatingly talented. I made the mistake of like trying to follow along in some of his videos quite early on when I was just starting out with oil paints. You can't do the stuff he does just like that. He makes it look so easy. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. He has such a casual and experienced approach to oil painting that he makes everything he does look really easy. This buttery texture combined with really crisp lines is what I love most about his style. There's also an Icelandic artist called Thorgrimur Einarsson, and they have pretty similar styles in my eyes. Very modern and crisp looking, lots of straight edges, which I love, and also this whole thing of leaving parts of the painting looking unfinished. Their paintings have almost an edible quality to them. You kind of want to eat them. I think it's the smeary brushstrokes and the thick layers of vibrant, creamy oil paint that you almost want to lick it off the canvas. And the way they're both like intentionally messing up their paintings a bit, roughing it up with those glitchy looking little streaks of paint. I just enjoy it so much. I will never be this talented. Anyways, there are also some digital artists that have inspired me a lot. One of them is Blaise. He is a former Disney animator. He worked on The Lion King, for example, and he does a lot of animal paintings, animal animation, creatures, characters, and he has a lot of courses as well. I've taken one of his Procreate classes. He even paints watercolor once in a while. A really like nice, fun, relaxing guy to listen to have like in the background when he's streaming one of his painting processes. Simon Stålenhag, another Swedish artist who's become very famous for his sci-fi paintings blended with old school Swedish ruggedness. I think there was even a movie made inspired by his work. Or a series. It's a TV series, actually. An Amazon original TV series called Tales from the Loop. I guess you could call it like Nordic cyberpunk in a way. Because it's really retro, you know, the way he draws and paints these robots and these environments, these really dark Nordic looking environments. That's really his signature style. It looks very realistic. I guess I might be a little bit biased in this because it's environments and vehicles and all of that stuff that I grew up with, like a kid born in 84, like a kid of the 80s and early 90s. I really recognize these types of environments, and it's so cool to see those environments but with like a bunch of really large cool robots in them. Such a unique style, the way he combines these two aesthetics. And then finally, another digital artist is Aleksander Rostov. I discovered him when I played the game Disco Elysium a while back, which is a detective story set in this imaginary world, and it's just one of the best RPG games I've ever played. I talked a little bit about it in one of my Q&As. The graphic style in that game was so kind of organic looking that I had to go and look up the lead artist behind the game, and that's Aleksander Rostov. He's probably the one that made me really want to give digital painting a try. I am surprisingly not as talented as he is. My digital paintings, they don't come out looking like this. I mean, a lot of his stuff, it doesn't look digital. And that's kind of the thing that fascinated me about him, is that his art looks very analog. It's very gritty and smudgy. It's not clean and crisp and overly blended the way that a lot of digital art is. I like digital art that feels and looks organic and analog. He can really do that. It's one of the reasons why this game, Disco Elysium, is such a pleasure to play. The whole game is just a piece of art, you know. It's artwork all over the place. The environments, the characters, the user interface, everything is just so stunning and painterly, and I had never really seen that before in a game, and it really opened up my eyes to what can be done digitally. Man, I would love to be able to create some of the stuff that he does. But yeah, Aleksander Rostov, check his stuff out. Of course, I am inspired by a lot of other artists as well, especially on YouTube, like Chelsea Lang, for example, Misako Flodin, Valerie Lin, Liron Yanconsky, Arlisha Yetzer, Stan Prokopenko. He has taught me so much, but these are some of my primary inspirations and role models as an artist. Please let me know in the comments if you want to recommend some other artists that I might like based on these that you have seen me mention here. So yeah, thank you for watching and for looking at great art with me, and I'll see you in another video.